Today I am reading The Hand I Fan With, a book that I first read when I was about 10 or 11 years old and absolutely adored, and it stuck with me for all these years. I'm going to drop in the caption below exactly why I'm rereading it because it's buku reasons. But I'm going to start from chapter 13. And for a little bit of context, the book is about a woman named Lena. Lena's the baby of the family. She was born with the caul over her face, and so she has like a special sight. She can see the spirit world. She can hear them way clearer than an ordinary person can. And she's been craving love, companionship, affection, and she got what she asked for. She got what she asked for when he appeared in her home, and it startled her at first. So she went from being scared, she was in the shower, to being curious. And so chapter 12 ended with her stepping out of the shower, and chapter 13 begins with her seeing him. So here we go. Herman had a noble face. Lena loved his face immediately. It was a face that she had seen in the arrangement of leaves on a tree in the woods, a shape that was there in the sunlight, then gone in the shade. It was a face that she had seen in the clouds. It was a face that showed innate gentleness. It was a face, she realized suddenly, that she had seen in her dreams. His face was broad but not round. His cheekbones were high and wide and seemed to stretch his sweet dark skin so tightly across his visage that Lena could not imagine him ever aging. It was difficult to think of anything old or aging or dying while looking into his face. As a child, Lena had heard her mother often exclaim, "Lord, have mercy, Lena. Every sin that woman ever committed was written on her face this morning." Looking at Herman made Lena think, every kindness this man has ever committed is written on his face this morning. Lena thought, he's the picture of health. On his right temple, half hidden in the thick edges of the thicket of his longish hair, was a faint scar shaped like a half moon. Lena was shocked at herself, but she had to restrain her hand from reaching up and caressing it. His eyes were black, as dark as midnight down by the river with no lights on, but they sparkled like something in a fairy tale. His brows and lashes were thick and just as ebony as his eyes. His eyebrows looked as if someone had wet a thumb with spit and smoothed the short hairs down, but his eyelashes were curly and unruly. He had a good head of hair, coal black like his eyes, and his eyes and hair seemed to have a life in them. He had long, bushy, nappy hair like a lion's mane around his broad face. It was not in dreads, but it was thick enough to be. His short, bushy mustache made him look daring, dashing, adventurous. Lena thought his mouth below his bushy mustache appeared made to sing songs. She did not know why she thought that, but she did. And his lips looked so soft they made her lick her own lips. His nose was what her grandmother called a proud African nose. A tall drink of water, Lena thought as she watched him stand there in her bathroom, leaning back on the counter behind him while standing back in his legs like a sexy woman. His muscular arms crossed over his barrel chest to let her take in all of him, or what there was of him. Although he stood a full 6 feet tall and full color with poetically beautiful tense shoulders and slightly bowed legs, he was nearly transparent, translucent, almost a vapor. Lena could just barely see the counter and bottles and towels and his dusty black hat through him. The steam wafting from the shower stall hung in the air around him, almost seemed to be a part of him. Even as a vapor, he was himself, there, set, Herman, himself. He gave new meaning to the phrase, ghost of a man. He was the most solid ghost of a man she had ever seen. He had the kind of shoulders Lena liked, broad, solid, but not thick and overly muscular. His thighs, Lena's favorite part of a man, were long, lean, sinewy, and strong. He looked to Lena to be about 35 years old or so, but with his flawless, bittersweet chocolate skin, Lena thought there's no telling how old he is. He reminded Lena of pictures and biographies of old-timey black men like farmers and blacksmiths and coopers and cowboys standing in front of their fragile-looking wooden country homes or beside their horses. He was wearing simple, brightly colored clothing, a light green cotton long-sleeve shirt with the cuffs rolled up over his arms to the bulge right above the elbow. And even with his big shirt tucked neatly into his pants, Lena could see that he had a nice, flat, hard stomach. His pants were heavy cotton, dark, nondescript work pants, but they didn't look like any work pants Lena had ever seen. They looked like they might have been handmade, but Lena thought, now who in the world makes their own work clothes? He was a man who looked good in his pants. He had narrow hips, like many country boys Lena had seen down at the place, lanky with a little huskiness thrown in to let you know he was used to doing a good day's work, and a real nice behind that she could see from the side that was not too high or too low. Nice. On his feet, big feet, Lena noted, he wore heavy boots, well worn but beautifully made of black leather with square heels and stirrup marks on the instep. They looked to Lena as if they had weathered many a trip. She tried to picture him in some Gucci loafers and no socks, a loosely constructed linen suit, black Ray-Bans, but even when she squinted, she could not get him out of the original clothes in her mind's eye. He seemed to belong in them. The dusty black weather-beaten hat on the vanity behind him looked like it belonged to him too. It was used, serviceable, and a little sexy. She was thinking how sexy he was when he spoke, startling her. "Morning, Lena. How do you do?" he asked politely, formally, and sort of tipped his head toward her. He was smiling so broadly, Lena had to admire his strong, small white teeth. She smiled back. He took this as encouragement and began his introductions again. "I'm Herman. I'm here 'cause you called me up." His insistence that she was responsible was really puzzling her. "I'm a spirit, Lena. Been one for most 100 years, but you called me here and made me real. You did that. And here I am." She still stood speechless, but she thought, "You certainly are here." As if to put a real punctuation mark at the end of that sentence, Herman stretched out his nearly transparent arm to her, and Lena watched in amazement as the limb began to materialize before her. As in an anatomy class, she saw the marrow and bone form. She could see how his wrist sockets fit together, how his elbow worked, how his fingers flexed, the tissue and muscle and cartilage covered that, the blood and tissue around and through and over that. Then the beautiful dark brown skin calloused and cut and burned and scarred in places over that. Then a few curly dark hairs appeared on his knuckles and above his wrist bone. Before the sweet brown skin appeared over his beautifully symmetrical skeleton, as his entire body began to materialize, she saw his heart beating in his chest, the blood rushing in on one side and pumping out the other. She saw his lungs appear and fill with air. She witnessed his skull form, and he even had what her grandmother had called a sense knot on the back of his skull over his brain. "Jesus, Mary, and Joseph," Lena intoned like a nun as she watched, transfixed and naked, except for a towel. Watching the creation, the transformation, Lena thought, there ought to be music, creation music. And right away, the wind outside began rustling the trees and the heavy metal wind chimes hanging in the enclosed porch leading to the deck outside the French doors of Lena's bedroom. She was too charmed by the beauty of the metamorphosis to be frightened by the McElroy aspects. She was too charmed by this spirit of a man, this Herman. He became more and more real, more and more solid, more and more firm, more and more precise, more and more tangible right there before her eyes as if fed by her seeing him. In a matter of seconds, she could no longer see right through him at all. He was truly there. He sighed one time, then he spoke, repeating his declaration in an ever stronger, more forceful voice. "I'm Herman. I'm here 'cause you called me up. I sure enough wanted to come, but I wouldn't be here if you didn't have called me here, period." Then he reached over and casually took her hand lightly in his new one. Lena could feel the blood coursing through the veins of his elegantly formed wrists, could actually feel his pulse, and she felt the tingle that traveled from her fingers all the way up her shoulder to her chest, and there it made her heart flutter a bit. The feeling was so thrilling she had to catch her breath. He then escorted her as naturally as anything through the bedroom to the deck as she clutched her towel to her naked body. She did not hesitate a moment but trailed behind him silently. She hardly noticed where they were headed because she could not take her eyes off the strong concave spot at the small of his back. Even beneath his shirt it appeared sculptured. Outside on the wide, deep sycamore deck, more wind chimes played along with the orchestral sounds of the akawachis rushing by. Lena smiled at the beauty of the natural music. Herman led her to the cushions and a teak swing hanging from the low ropes connected to a high beam over the deck, and they sat. He continued to hold onto her hand, not against her will, yet securely. She thought she could actually feel him become human. With his unencumbered hand, he pointed to the remnants of Lena and sister's man summoning ceremony. This when it happened, Lena. You called me up. It took a second for Lena to realize what Herman meant. You trying to tell me it worked? She shouted, catching her breath. That the two of us, half drunk, performed a ceremony that called forth a man? The ceremony called you up? Lena asked incredulously. Herman just laughed. Not a foolish or derisive laugh, just a truly tickled one. All this little stuff, he said, smiling and pointing to the ashes and candles and pictures. The power ain't in this. These things is just showing you that you willing to do the ceremony, willing to go to the trouble to get the pink candle. It show you believe. But your ceremony didn't call me up, Lena. You called me up. It was you, Lena. You called me in. That's all it took, an invitation from you. Lena turned away to try to hide her smile. This ghost, this Herman, pronounced the word invitation as if it were imitation. He said it a bit like folks she remembered from her childhood at the place, like her elderly gardener still pronounced it. The pronunciation sounded so dear to Lena's ears. It was not so much that this Herman mispronounced some words as it was that he stamped them with the imprint of his own style of speech. This Herman claimed his words. Lena felt in her bones he was coming to claim her too. When she didn't say anything, Herman continued, I've been watching you for decades, Lena. Lena pulled her hand away from the ghost at the disquieting thought of being secretly watched, even if it was by a ghost. She could see by his face that the gesture hurt his heart, but she felt exposed and vulnerable at this news. He seemed to twitch a bit and quickly added, Nothing improper. Nothing I don't think you would think improper anyway. Herman put his newly formed elbows on his newly formed knees and leaned forward with a serious look in his face. She pulled her towel a bit tighter around her. Lena, it wasn't like that, he said softly. Shoot, Spirit's been watching you since you've been born. I wasn't at your birth, Lena, but I sure did hear about it, Herman said. What do you mean you heard about it? Lena wanted to know. She could not believe that the mulberry gossip mill extended even into the beyond. Oh, we spirits communicate with each other more than we talk to y'all, Herman replied matter-of-factly. And your birth gave us a lot to talk about. It was almost like it shook the whole afterlife world. I was on my way back hereabouts to Mulberry to see what the to-do was all about when your mama poured out that cold tea in that green vase of flowers and your protection from mean spirits along with it. There was noise and disturbance in my world like I had never heard when that happened. Lena, it was like all heaven and hell had been let loose. Oh, the howls and screams and shrieks and yells and lamentations that went up that day. Oh, Lena, even I was a little disquieted by it all. Word got round about your mama throwing out that precious cold tea about as quick as word about your birth. Shoot, Lena, from what I hear, your birth now, that was something, he said as if he had been conversing with her all his life. Then he chuckled, almost as impressive as your ritual the other night. Lena could not seem to help herself. No matter how many times she silently warned herself to keep alert while sitting nearly naked with this strange man on her deserted deck, she kept getting more and more comfortable with him. You were around when I was born and last week when sister was here, she asked. In reply, he closed his dark eyes and began to imitate the sounds perfectly that she and her friend had made as sister had invoked the spirits to arise with the love for Lena. Maybe he was there, she thought. Lena, I was there, he said. There was a waning moon that night, and when y'all lit the white candles, a big old cloud passed over it. Lena felt a little chill on her bare shoulders and realized the sun overhead had gone beneath the cloud. I heard both y'all. From the first word you uttered, Lena, I knew it was me you was calling up. I didn't even have to fight nobody else off to get to you this time. Lena would have been embarrassed for anyone to know it, but she felt a little swell of pride at the idea of this good-looking, kind-hearted spirit fighting to get to her. Shoot, Lena, he said, seeming to read her mind again. I'd fight the very devil for you. Lena had to bite her bottom lip to combat the hot rush that flooded her entire naked body. Herman kept on talking. And when sister was finished chanting what she had learned from Madame Delphi, you, Lena, was saying, Jesus, 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 Jesus. Lena looked at him with her mouth hanging open. See, he said triumphantly. I told you I was there. But that's all mumbo jumbo if you don't truly open your heart to believe. And Lena, whether you know it or not, you did indeed open your heart to me because we sitting here talking to each other. She recalled her prayer from the night before, but all she said was, Mostly, Lena, I want you to see me in the full light of day so you can see me clearly. You had a night to think on it, and I had eternity to toss and turn thinking I'd have misread your invitation. He paused. Lena, I don't care how good it feels now that we laughing and talking and all. Now's the time I want to get this straight. I've been wanting you a long time, Lena, but I don't want you getting the wrong idea. I want us both to understand right now that I would never come up inside of you like I did last night in your pool if you hadn't asked me in. I wouldn't have done that. I don't do that. I ain't that kind of man. I wasn't alive, and I ain't that kind of man dead. You hear me, Lena? She started to nod yes. I sure didn't mean to scare you or force you. By the way you was acting in your car and dancing yesterday down at that place of yours, I sure you saw me and felt me there. You looked right at me and cussed. Give me a minute here, Lena was finally able to say. Lena, I know the difference between quit and no, I do. And I swear to God, all I heard was quit. Just give me a minute here, Lena said again. She felt she needed to slow things down a bit. She was falling so easily into conversation with his full-bodied spirit that it scared her a bit. She had hardly spoken since he had shown his face, and she was having trouble believing that this ghost was truly real. To tell you the truth, Lena, I'm having some trouble believing I'm here myself, Herman said, reading her mind again. I've been floating around these parts a long time because it's the last place I lived. Middle Georgia, South Georgia, and North Florida. This used to be my old stomping grounds, and too, this spot of earth meant something to me. But like this, flesh and blood, bone and muscle? No, Lena, I just been kind of floating around from what seemed like place to place. Sometimes I feel like I've been in the belly of the whale for just 3 days and 3 nights. Then again, like now, it seemed like I've been waiting eternity. To be honest with you, Lena, and I don't ever plan to be nothing else, but even though I've been hanging around Georgia and Florida mostly, I don't know exactly where I've been these last 100 years because I ain't been in your world or the next. The last 100 years? Lena wasn't sure if she had heard it correctly. Well, this here 1995, ain't it? He asked. April 2nd or 3rd or 4th. Lena couldn't believe that with Herman sitting so near, she could not even remember the correct date. Yeah, that's when I passed, the first week of April in 1895, kicked in the head by a mule. Herman turned his head to Lena to show her the half-moon scar on his right temple. It made her gasp, and Herman sort of reached his hand out to comfort her. He merely brushed her bare shoulder above where she had the towel tucked around her, and she felt better right away. The touch, electric and warm, felt like a blessing. It left her arm tingling. Oh, it was my fault, really, Lena, he said reassuringly. My mind was somewhere else. Something I was working on, probably can't remember what it was to save my life, but I know I was distracted. And I came up on the mule from the back too fast, sudden like. I should have known better, Lena, but like I say, my mind was somewhere else. He just reared up and kicked back on me with both hind legs, and I was dead before I hit the ground. Lena found herself growing sad at the picture Herman painted. Herman lying on the ground, blood gushing from his wound, his brain kicked into stillness, and he rushed to make it better for her. I wouldn't have been no good for anybody if I had survived, Lena, he said with a self-effacing grin and a shake of his generous-sized head. Lena did not think it was a bit funny, but she had to smile at this man making fun of his own death to try to make her feel better. Then she chuckled at the thought of Herman, this handsome, husky black man from another century, not being good for anything. I'm good for you, Lena, baby. I'm your man. You call me here. You call me up just as good. I'm your man. Lena liked the sound of that. She had never had anyone refer to himself as her man. In the car the other morning by the river last night by the pool, I just got too close, Herman continued. But I tell you, next time you decide when we get that close again, all right? His suggestion made all the difference in the world to Lena's comfort. Lena stared at him as the pieces fell into place. Herman, she said, using his name for the first time, you were the breeze. You were the face in the mirror in the car. You were the smell at the place. Herman smiled and nodded, and Lena suddenly felt like she was talking with a trusted friend, not a strange ghost. They sat on the deck, still wrapped in her big fluffy towel, her wet braids hanging to her shoulders and dripping down her bare back in the morning air, and talked. There was always just something about you, Lena, that seemed to draw me to you when you seemed to need help or some guidance or some protecting a little. I'll be right there beside you in middle Georgia. Then the next thing I know, I'll be off somewhere else, down deep in Florida or over in the Panhandle where we went scouting for oysters and such. You know, it ain't easy for a spirit, even one still caught between this world and that, to just move around anywhere he pleased. Your spirit is just so tied to some places and sometimes to people. That's what happened with you. I seed you as a little thing being pulled over alive into a world of dead folks by another pretty little girl, and I can't help but tickle her feet, so she let you go. Then the next thing I know, I'm down in the bogs of the Okefenokee swamps. Next time I see you, Lena, you a big girl laying out in the woods behind your house at night, scared as you can be, and rightfully so, too. There was all kinds of things out in the night with you. It was like watching a baby rabbit being about to be set upon by a wildcat. In the woods? Was I about 16 or so? Lena asked, remembering her nights of sleepwalking as a teenager and the terror of waking one night alone in the lost woods, dressed only in her nightgown. I don't know how exactly old you was, Lena, but you looked to be about a girl in her teen years. I didn't know what to do about you, Lena. You were surrounded by all kinds of spirits, so I just girded my guts the way my pa had taught me as a boy and strode right into that scene. Well, I must have been more powerful than I thought I was, or just doing what I was supposed to do, because them spirits scattered. They just broke in a million pieces, it seemed like, and scattered. Lena, sitting on the edge of her chair, listened as if she were 5 and her grandmother were telling one of the ghost stories that Nellie thought were too graphic for the children, especially for Lena, whom her mother had marked in the womb as high-strung. Then there was the time I saw you on a train. You was going to college, I think. You didn't even know how surrounded you was with spirits ready to do you harm. I was real glad when you made it through that. Then later in your dormitory room, I think you saw the spirits then, didn't you? Lena mostly just nodded or shook her head in response to what sounded like rhetorical questions. Every once in a while, she would think, I'm sitting here on my deck talking to a ghost in broad daylight. But for the most part, she did not give her behavior a thought. Herman enthralled her. Lena was learning more about life, death, and herself in one conversation with Herman than she had learned in her whole life of struggling and bumping around trying to find things out. She had not felt this relaxed with anyone since she first encountered Sister almost 30 years ago. Herman told her all kinds of things about spirits. Ghosts can only terrorize folks who allow themselves to be terrorized, he told her. It's easier for spirits like me to come back to this world because they ain't completely crossed over yet. I give you my word that you the first living human who been able to draw me completely back into the world. I stopped by a campsite and tried to eat a piece of fried fish, a tripe or something good I couldn't resist, but mostly I just been wandering and watching and observing, content to do it. There's so much to see and appreciate in your life. Somehow we can't seem to get a knack at it while we still here living. Herman tried in different ways to explain to Lena about the state he had been in since his accidental death in 1895. But in the final analysis, he had to admit, Lena, I don't rightly know why I'm still out here like this. All I know for certain is that with each tick of your clock, with each passing of each one of your years, I seem to get stronger and stronger. I feel I must feel less dead right now than just about anybody around, live or dead. He paused and looked Lena dead in her eyes. And now, Lena, I know why I'm here. 'Cause you want me here, period. Lena could not help herself. She believed him. She believed she had invited Herman in, and she was beginning to feel it was the best decision she had ever made. Whew.